Each time I create an invoice for Brookfield, as long as there is an outstanding estimate, even part of an outstanding estimate, it will go ahead and prompt me if I want to use the rest of that estimate. So that way I can charge them 1 time, 12 times, 24 times. It doesn't matter. Until the estimate is used up, basically, that option will come into play. What I need to do before I give them more information, though, or send them another invoice, is to get them the first invoice. That always makes sense. And this is very easy to do. Remember that you can use both emailing, which is really great. It saves you time. It saves you money. You don't have to buy stamps. Or you can print out hard copies. In order to do so, I'm simply going to go up to the File menu and come down about 3/4 of the way, and you'll see a couple of different options. First of all, you have Print Forms and Send Forms. Send Forms is what you would do if you were going to email. This would go ahead and launch a dialog box like we'll see in a minute, and it will use our email client, whatever that may be, to send these out via email. Sometimes I think I don't have to say it, but then somebody calls me and says this doesn't work, and it reminds me I do. In order to be able to send forms via email, you do have to have an email address as part of the customer record. And you, of course, also have to have an internet connection and your own email account through which it can be sent. With that said, though, we're not going to do email here. We're actually going to go to Print Forms. And you'll see from Print Forms that there are several different things that we can print as you go through the process, from these invoices all the way down to pay stubs and 1099s for end of the year. We're simply going to choose Invoices, and that brings up a dialog box. This dialog box will list all of the invoices that you had selected that needed to be printed, but you don't have to print them all. If you don't want to print something, you can just remove the check mark from the left-hand side. If you have a lot of these, you'll notice over on the right side, you have a Select All and Select None, so you don't have to go crazy with your mouse finger clicking to remove a lot of things. You can use these buttons to get either one, which will be better for you. You also have an option to print labels, which is kind of nice. I actually like to print out my invoices into windowed envelopes because then I don't have to make labels. When we do the customizing chapter a little bit later, I'll show you exactly how you can configure your invoices and statements and other things to be sure that they'll fit within the window that's on a windowed envelope. For now, though, we're talking about printing, so that's what we'll do. I've selected my 2 invoices. I click OK. This brings up a print dialog box, not unlike the ones that you've seen in other applications. You need to select your printer, select the type of printed page, but most importantly is kind of this middle section. You can order all kinds of pre-printed forms from Intuit for invoices and statements and checks and those types of things. There are also a lot of third-party vendors that provide items that are just as good. Just make sure you look at the back of the box usually, and it'll say what software it will work with. It's important that you get checks and invoices and things that are actually formatted for something that QuickBooks can do. I actually use blank paper because when I customize my invoice, it has all of my logos and everything on it, and so blank paper looks just fine and it's relatively cheap. I just print them as I need them. You also could print onto your company letterhead. Usually that means there's going to be part at the top and the bottom that needs to be an extra margin because that's where all of your letterhead information is. You also can choose to not print lines around each field, and you can even print multiple copies. So we'll go ahead and set that one up. And then we would normally click Print. Since you can't see things that print out, I'm going to use the Preview button so you can see what this looks like. It opens a print preview as you'd expect, and I can click once to zoom in so you can see it a little bit better, and then scroll up and down so we can see it. Now, I will tell you that this is just the default invoice, and in my opinion isn't always right or the only one, it's not very good looking, but that's why we customize these things. But overall, it's also not too bad. It has all of the information in it about the customer, about us, the fact that it's an invoice, the date. If we scroll down, it has terms, a particular project it might be good for, and then of course there's all the details, in this case, of Andy's purchase. If I go to Next Page at the top of the screen, now I'm looking for Brookfield, and you can see that this one, of course, is a lot more detailed. It does include the name of the project, so this is the QuickBooks 2009 rollout. It has their shipping terms, and it has all of those details about the progressive invoice that we're doing. Once you're finished with the preview, then you could go to the very left-hand edge at the top and click Print. In my case, I'm just going to click Close, and close again, and get back to my regular screen. I spend an awful lot of time talking about the setup of QuickBooks, about what accounting is and how all of that works. But as soon as we start getting into working with our vendors and our customers and our products and then actually selling things, sometimes we kind of forget about the accounting. So I wanted to take just a second at the end of this chapter to remind you what happens when you actually do an invoice. First of all, your account receivables increase by the amount of the invoice because we haven't received the money yet. With a cash sale, then we actually have to do something with the cash. It's either in petty cash, waiting to be deposited, those types of things. But for an invoice, this is money that is owed that we haven't received yet. The invoice shows in both the sales and the open invoice report, so you can start to see that in reporting. The items that are purchased are tracked in the sales by item report, for example. And if products are purchased, the quantities are removed from inventory. Now you have to remember that in this particular example that we've been working through, I actually need to go in and order more CBTs because I don't have the 70 that I need, 60 plus 10. So that's another step that I would need to do. But in this case, the inventory is being reduced by that amount, and QuickBooks is doing all that math. And if the inventory is inadequate, as we saw, it's going to remind me that I need to order. And lastly, the income will be shown in the profit and loss statement. Remember, there's also a difference between cash versus accrual accounting. If I'm using the cash system, then the income won't show up yet because I haven't gotten it. If, however, I'm using accrual, then as soon as the invoice is written, it shows up as a sale for that particular period.